Your birth was a curse on the whole of humanity. I will not allow it to happen again. You brought me back to give you life, but now I must take yours.
We'll see, bitch.
Hey, you watch your language, you piece of shit.
We're gonna have fun with this thing.
They continue a story. They retcon. They can be great, but in general, they can be flat out terrible. These are known as sequels. Many films out there have such a strong standalone film that audiences almost demand a continuation. It's worked for the greater good, like in the most common examples, Aliens and Judgment Day. But even those strong sequels couldn't survive the onslaught of unwanted sequels, generally by new crew members, that either ruin what was already phenomenal or retcon something and completely change the rules of the previous films. And one unfortunate slasher film had to go through the same thing. This was known as A Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy Krueger would stand next to Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers as the most iconic slasher mascots. But all three happened to go through the exact same curse. A bombardment of sequels where some are good, some are passable, and others are just flat out embarrassing. The only difference is Freddy has the fewest amount of films, even including the 2010 remake, so his bad films tend to stand out a lot more. Today we are covering what many consider to be the worst of the series, The Dream Child. And that's assuming you don't find Freddy's Dead, the final nightmare, to be the worst. And this is partly due to Freddy experiencing a drastic tone change in his character. The series, when it started, was this truly terrifying concept of a dream demon who stalks your dreams and kills you from inside them. Freddy would taunt his victims mercilessly before killing them in some of the most creative and scary ways possible. But then, as more sequels came out, he became less of a scary dream demon with dark humor and became more of a comedic villain who kills people sometimes. Basically, he went from this
is God.
You've got the body. I've got the brain. I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy. You are all my children now.
to this.
How's this for a wet dream?
Hey, you forgot the power glove. Got your nose.
But this seems really random, right? Like, why movie 5 of all things? Why not review the first one? Truth be told, there are some things that I actually do not mind in this movie that others may have more of a hatred towards. And I want to talk about them. So, directed by Stephen Hawkins, does Elm Street 5 actually have hidden genius in it that no one noticed? Or was it just directed and written by a child? Alrighty then! We start off with an extreme close-up slow-mo
Sex scene.
which is honestly giving the opening to Night at the Museum a run for its money. Similarly, this only exists to show all the credits before the movie starts and so we can hear the main theme. Okay, so like, Jay Ferguson, I know what you were trying to do here. Title's called Dream Child, so you want to go for music that kind of sounds childish, but also trying to put a creepy twist on it. Only problem is, I'm not really feeling chills down my spine as much as I'm feeling annoyance in my ears. It just goes all over the place and it's too high-pitched for my liking. I like choirs as background accompaniment, but these are like high-pitched ha's that kind of get on my nerves. Especially when we gotta sit through 3 minutes and 20 seconds of it. Gotta go back to the first film real quick to explain, while its theme has a high-pitched choir, it blends well with the other instrumentals and it isn't distracting. Now that's a theme to send chills down the spine. Anyway, after
Sex is a shower.
and right off the bat, some interesting things happen. Wow, I haven't broken that one out in a while. Whoa, there's diarrhea water coming out of my drain. I guess I'm just gonna stick my finger in it. So yeah, the main character here, whom I will talk about soon, is forced out of her shower and into an asylum. Okay, so I figure I should point out that Freddy is not actually around. So you may be confused as to why she's in this kind of dream sequence, but don't worry, the answer will still leave you confused. While in this dream, we see a nun, and a dramatic camera change to her name tag shows us that she's Amanda Krueger, aka Freddy's mom. Wait, no, that's the main character in the nun outfit. Anyway, we get a sweeping shot of the inmates here who look like they're doing poses I would do for a roller coaster photo. But there's one here that is kind of sort of important to show. There he is! Robert Englund himself in non-Freddy makeup. And I'm gonna be completely honest with you here. I don't know if this is supposed to be like pre-Freddy or if they wanted to put Englund in here as a not-quite cameo. So being that she's trapped in a big room full of creepos, she gets involved in a very friendly mosh pit with a guy who really seems like he enjoys them. But thankfully, main character is okay, and she wakes up right next to her boyfriend and... So yeah, the whole beginning portion, including credits, the
Sex in the shower.
and the asylum was a dream sequence. But who am I kidding? Every Elm Street movie starts that way. But what the others don't do is the main character waking up inside a second dream only to get jump scared out of that one. And things in the real world don't stop from getting strange as she has a plant growing out of a pair of pants. At her high school graduation, we get introduced to the supporting cast, so now we'll talk about the main character. She is Alice, who is a survivor of Elm Street 4. The other survivor is her boyfriend, Dan. So in order to talk about Alice, we gotta discuss a major plot point that started all the way back in Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. The main character in that, Kristen, who is played by Kristen K. Barlow herself, had a special gift that let her bring other people into her dreams. And this was really helpful for those who wanted to hunt down Freddy and kill him once and for all. And they kinda did, but kinda didn't. His bones were buried in the real world, which I'll say defeated him. In Dream Master, Kristen was back, this time played by somebody else, but this is where Alice was introduced. Kristen dies fairly early on, soon after Freddy's revival, but just before she does, she used some sort of Deus Ex magical dreamscape nonsense that transferred her power to Alice. Now she became the new target and learned that this gift was not very helpful for those unaware of Freddy. So they'd be kind of bringing that back in this film. But as far as Alice is as a character, she's nicely written, but her actress needed some seasoning. She's kind of bland and sometimes her delivery doesn't sound right to the situation at hand. Bars! I'll show you when those times come around. Dan's a nice guy who's very supportive of Alice. He wants to take her on vacation to France. And that's always nice. I just hope you're able to afford that easily with being a high school graduate. Then there's Greta. She's kind of forced by her mom to be a cover girl and she doesn't want to be. And you know, it's nice that she's an attractive person who doesn't want to expose herself in that manner. And then there is Mark, who is my favorite character. He's a comic book nerd who has a crush on Greta and kind of jokes around with the idea that she may be out of his league.
When are you gonna run away with me?
Next live. What's that?
My undying love, have some.
Mark, give it up. It's hopeless.
No, I think I'm starting to wear it down. Have a taste anyway.
But at the same time, Greta isn't mean or egotistical about it. And I'm gonna be honest with you here, I think Joe Seeley, who's playing Mark, really tried his best in this film. I don't know, just something about his performance kind of draws me in whenever he's in a conversation with someone. Maybe it's because he's genuinely curious about Freddy and isn't against Alice when he inevitably comes back and others think she's crazy. Yes, he unfortunately falls under the weird Elm Street trope that started happening where certain characters have specific traits about them that are just foreshadows for a later point in the movie, but I still like him. And lastly, there's Yvonne. Gonna make this short and sour. I hate her. Probably gonna sound crude here, but her voice is really annoying.
Dan keeping you up again? Girl, you better put a lock in that window.
And for more than half of the movie, she falls under the I'm not gonna believe you cliche even when she's given proof about Freddy. Alice's dad shows up as a sort of surprise visit. I think he was pretty unlikable in Dream Master. His scenes aren't ringing a bell, but I don't really care to watch the entirety of it to find just that out. But he's trying to change his ways in this flick, and even though he doesn't have many scenes, there weren't any that made me say, wow, I really wish Alice brought you into a dream sequence right about now. And hey, speaking of, after declining an offer for her dad to give her a lift to work and saying it's just across the park, she probably should have taken that offer because she notices some very familiar kids.
3, 4, better lock your door. 5, 6, grab your crucifix. 7, 8, better stay up late.
No, I did not skip anything. And also no, this is not a third dream sequence within the other 2 dream sequences at the start. Alice, while fully awake and conscious, somehow stepped into a dream sequence. And for some reasons, she decides to follow the kids, even though she should also know that this is a very, very bad idea.
Better stay awake. 9, 10, he's back again.
She still doesn't get the hint to go back and finds a somewhat familiar place and face. Alice, honey, WolfLandmaster says that's a bad idea. What? He said it's a bad idea. What's a bad idea? Alice is just barely jump scared into a stretcher as dream doctors and nurses, which is actually not the title of Elm Street 6, bring her into a delivery room. Cause guess what? This movie's about the miracle of birth. Alice lets out a scream, and then the camera pans around the nurses to show us that in a first-person perspective, Alice is looking at herself who is looking down at Amanda in the stretcher. But yeah, this is how Freddy is coming back, by being reborn out of Amanda.
Push!
Well now, that's not very nice. Granted, it makes sense that this doctor would say it, cause out of Amanda comes a spliced up Squidward and Red Skull. He escapes out of the delivery room and into the church where the climax of Dream Master took place, crawls in his clothes, and starts growing. And now that he's back and face to face with the woman who defeated him less than a year ago, there is no doubt he will have the scariest returning speech he's ever given.
It's a boy!
And you just made the Space Kooks opening scene scarier. So I think the idea with England being in the scene before was that he was supposed to be the main ingredient for Freddy's appearance, and then that combined with everybody else in the mosh pit created his personality, I guess. Before he has the chance to really toy with her and or kill her, Amanda breaks out of John Woo's closet to scare Freddy away.
Your birth was a curse on the whole of humanity. I will not allow it to happen again. You brought me back to give you life, but now I must take yours.
So, even though he wasn't born yet, he still had the power to bring her back so she can give him life. Wrap your head around that one. Amanda's the key to stopping Freddy, but he locks the door on her and now Alice has to go on an Easter egg hunt to find out where she is. Alice calls up Dan at a local pool Yvonne works at to tell him Freddy's back.
He must have dreamt himself up. I don't know. Jesus, Dan, I'm scared.
Yeah, see, here's one of those examples where her delivery doesn't really sound right to the situation at hand. Because I don't know about you, but I'd be sounding a little bit more frantic on the phone if I found out that a dream demon just came back and can possibly murder us all. He rushes to his truck, steps on the gas, and heads to the diner to meet up with her. And I guess he had short-term memory loss of what a Freddy Krueger is, because he dozes off on the way there, and you know what that means?
I'm calling about my wayward ex-son Daniel, who's been acting like an ungrateful, unmanageable
Donkey!
ever since he was seduced by that Alice.
Mom? If I were you, lady, I'd kill the ungrateful pig.
Dan manages to escape the truck into the pool area again. He tries to pick up a phone, but the booth is locked. He steals a motorcycle. You start thinking how Dan is still asleep for this long while driving in the real world, and Freddy is now the motorcycle.
The need for speed. Hey, Dan! It's morphing time!
I gotta admit here, this death scene is pretty effective and awesome. I almost always get this cringy feeling when the wires enter into his legs and hands. And that's the kind of feeling you want to have in these dream sequences. Granted, I'm not sure why he gets turned into a Chinese knockoff Ghost Rider, but it leads to the solid first kill of the movie.
Coffee, please?
Yeah.
Boo! I'm just kidding, here's the real jump scare. We cut to a hospital where Yvonne actually works at. I overlooked that she is a competitive swimmer, but does not actually work at the pool, where we find out that Alice is pregnant. She stays there for the night as a little boy shows up.
Hi.
Hello.
What's your name?
Jacob.
Really? I've always loved that name. Shouldn't you be in your room, Jacob?
It's lonely there.
Well, my name
I'm
is...
sorry your boyfriend got killed.
How did you know that?
I could tell you were sad. I just wanted to see if you're all right.
Jacob, wait, don't go.
I feel like I know him from somewhere.
Okay, it's been about 2 minutes. You ready for another headache? Good! Because the twist about this moment is this hospital has no child patients nor even a children's ward. Yet, he's in a hospital gown. After taking a look at Greta's room, which looks like the perfect location for a 10 real paranormal sightings list, Alice gathers everyone and goes through the backstory that they always have to remind us of, even though we already know by now. Freddy was a bad boy, parents got mad, parents threw fire at Freddy. Yvonne, as I've said before, will not believe her, but Greta and Mark aren't entirely unbelieving.
Bottom line, Alice, if anybody's trying to hurt you, supernatural or not, you're gonna have to go through us first.
Okay, Greta. What's your plan to stop Freddy? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Bon appetit!
Good lord, you'd have a better chance of giving me nightmares by replacing him with King Ramses wearing a chef hat.
Return the slab, or suffer my curse.
This time around, he makes Greta do the Chubby Bunny challenge with fewer marshmallows.
Second helping!
Don't talk with your mouth full, dear.
You are what you eat! Hey, Greta! Guess what my favorite show is? Kitchen Nightmares! Baby,
Dan's death was a bit cooler, this one is still not that bad. I think choking to death is one of the more terrifying ways to die, and this scene captures that while adding its Elm Street garnish. Being that Greta was Mark's crush, he's of course the most upset and wants to learn more about Freddy. But, again, Yvonne still isn't gonna believe Alice, even though Mark hits her with the logic.
Why don't you two stick to reality?
Why don't you shut up and let her talk? I mean, 2 of us have died in the past 2 days. Does that strike you as particularly normal?
After going to his place and Alice dropping more knowledge about Freddy off screen, we see Mark has fallen asleep, which means a dream sequence is about to happen. But it actually has a somewhat creepy and clever way of starting up. She notices a drawing of the original Elm Street house, and then an animated drawing of Mark appearing outside and walking into the house. I don't know why she had to write her name and draw a stick figure of herself to go in, but it happens. Luckily, it's not too late to help Mark as he dangles over that green screen that Dan fell into earlier. And in case you're curious, no, that is not a portal to hell, but don't worry, we'll talk about what that is soon. Luckily, she is able to save him, though not without a couple injuries. He faints in his dream, which I guess caused him to wake up.
Jacob?
Oh, hello.
Hi. You don't look very well. Are you feeling all right?
Been having bad dreams.
You're from somewhere.
Is this where you live, Jacob?
Just waiting for someone. It's sad about Greta.
Is that who you're waiting for?
No.
I don't think this is a very nice place for you to be. Maybe we should go look for your mom.
She doesn't want me around.
Oh my God, where are you from?
I'll bet she's very worried about you. I would be.
No, you're not. You don't even care about being a mom. How come you don't think about me?
Who said I what?
I like you. I want to stay with you. How come you don't like me?
Okay, so like, I'm not gonna keep it a secret anymore, because they basically give it away here and literally say it in the next scene. This kid is Alice's baby. Go on. Do your worst, movie. Somehow he is showing up in these dreams as like a 5 or 6-year-old. And already has a name before Alice even thought of one. So Freddy's manipulating Jacob by saying Alice doesn't want him and stuff like that. However, she is basically forced out of her dream and is back in Mark's room. She goes to the hospital for an ultrasound to make sure that her dream child is okay. And it's here where pretty much the grand twist of the movie is revealed.
As the fetus develops, it can spend up to 70% of its day in a dream state.
Will I be able to sense them?
Is that why you're here? To see if your baby's having nightmares?
Yep, this is why Alice has just been walking into dreams while fully awake, and technically how Freddy came back, using her unborn child's dreams. So, this is about where the movie really starts losing me. Because they basically retconned the entire series with this. Freddy uses the souls of Dan and Greta to basically feed Jacob so he can create a Freddy offspring so he can live through Jacob's dreams. But the problem is, that's not how Freddy works. He's supposed to be strong and live in other people's dreams based on fear. The more he's feared, the stronger he becomes. I mean, I guess you could say the opening dream sequence, even though Freddy wasn't in it, Alice might have had slight memories of Freddy, and she had slight fear of him coming back. So then that was just enough spark for him to at least come back and take over Jacob's dreams. I don't know. Oh yeah, and that green screen effect that Dan fell into, and Mark almost fell into. This is that place. But we still have more movie left, so let's continue on. After being oblivious for so long, bars! Yvonne learns the facts the hard way as Freddy turns the diving board into his hand. And I really like this effect, but it doesn't lead to her death, so it's kind of disappointing. She dives into the asylum's water tower, I guess, as Alice is dragged into. Freddy shows up, but quickly retreats because he's scared of Amanda, even though he locked her up, and goes for Mark a second time. The sweater under Chucky's back! He taunts Mark with Greta, which triggers him and transforms him into a comic character that he had been drawing throughout the film. And he happens to do what most other supporting Elm Street characters don't. And that's trying to fight back. It doesn't really work though, as Freddy evolves into Machoke wearing a fedora and Power Rangers Lightning Bolt sweater. Yeah, it sucks that my favorite character dies here, but at least he went out fighting, and with a death sequence that goes for more style points compared to the others.
Yes, Super Freddy! Told ya! Comic books was bad for ya! I make so many jokes in this movie, I guess you could call me the comic relief!
Actually, if there's anything this movie doesn't have, it's relief. Now that Yvonne is a believer, I couldn't leave her if I tried. Okay, so Smash Mouth references aside, Alice has her find Amanda in the real world as Alice goes to taunt Freddy in the dream world. And not only do we get more below average line delivery,
I was stronger than you! So you picked on Jacob, you bastard!
but we also find out that she's related to Deadpool.
Like you, so you can live through his dreams! Well, I won't let you.
She finds Freddy and pushes him down into the asylum cell where he gets involved in a friendly game of tug of war. Unfortunately, everyone tugs a little too hard and he's turned into poorly rendered tarantulas. At least until they reach Alice and become real. Yeah, okay. Supposed to be the strongest protagonist of the series, has been through 1 3/4 length of Elm Street films, and it's a tarantula that makes her shriek.
I'm your real friend, Jacob. Just like your daddy. Good-y, good-y, go. Good-y, good-y, go. I got you.
Mommy, meet my friend.
Nice try, Alice. Thanks, babe. It's my new look. Like it?
That doesn't look very scary. More like a 6-foot turkey.
I swear somehow, no matter the movie I talk about, Jurassic Park always has to follow me wherever I go. Doesn't matter the genre, doesn't matter how serious it is, it's just always gonna follow me. Alright, let's see how Yvonne's adventure's going.
No. 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 You better not. I swear to God, if you do a jump scare, I'm gonna end this video. I swear to God. No, no, don't do it. Don't you f***ing do it. No, no.
Okay, so I'm not done here, but we're gonna skim through the last of it because I just want to be done with this movie. Amanda shows up, the souls of Dan, Greta, and Mark pull the baby version of Freddy to her. Jacob turns back into an actual baby and returns to the holding zone. Amanda tries doing the same thing, but with less success. We cut to several years later where Alice, Yvonne, Jacob, and Zaddy are enjoying a picnic, and Alice seems to not notice some rather familiar kids. Either that, or she ignores them, which is what she should have done in the first place and what you ought to do to this movie. If the original would be compared to Doritos and a nice crisp Fanta berry, this movie is lightly salted Pringles and tonic water. The story makes no sense whatsoever, unless maybe you start with this movie as your first in the series. But nobody's gonna do that. And I don't know, like, most of the dreams in this are kinda lifeless. Some of the fun of the earlier films was how it transitioned from real to dream world. Like when Nancy runs up a flight of stairs only to have them turn to goo. Or even in the second film, how in Jesse's room, the temperature was getting hotter and hotter until things in his room were melting. This movie has maybe 2 or 3 ways it plays with your mind on reality versus dream. The opening shower scene, the motorcycle turning into Freddy's face, and the diving board turning into his hand. Other than that, it only messes with your head because of how big the plot holes are. So big, in fact, you might as well call them plot trenches. I actually think it would have been a fun idea to explore the concept of daydreaming. You know, those moments where you don't really sleep, but you're in a blank state where your mind just wanders off. That would have been something new for the series and could have worked better than what they tried doing here. Yeah, there are a couple things I like in this. Dan, who jokes around in a fun way and is genuinely nice to Alice. Greta, whom while doesn't have the most development of the characters, she at least tries her best to stand out in some ways. For example, I like, anyway, how she's an attractive person but doesn't want to be a cover girl. And I like how she even sheds a tear after Dan's death as she looks back at the graduation photo for memory purposes. I feel like most supporting casts in slasher films would not actually do that, so it was a nice change of pace to see someone like her do that. And yeah, as I said before, Mark's my favorite character because he genuinely helps Alice, and whenever he's in a conversation, I'm just drawn into it. The practical and stop motion effects are really good, and the death scenes are very creative. But when story fails, it all has to come down to the main character and Freddy. And somehow, they got reverse situations going on, but ultimately lead to the same fate. With Alice, her character is written good, but Lisa Wilcox, her actress, doesn't really sell the character as her own. And I understand that she's been in many projects since then and continues to be in projects now, but we're talking about 1989 Wilcox here. Meanwhile, Freddy is not written well at all, but Robert Englund still sells the character as his own. Wilcox sometimes sounds like she's trying to remember what her lines are, while Englund just nails each line, but then comes the problem of he's written a little too goofy when he's supposed to be terrifying and make you scared to fall asleep. So I kinda gotta put both in the cons. If you thought this review was gonna be similar to that of Jurassic Park 3 where I found it underrated and just wanted to defend it and show you the film from a different perspective, hope you like the plot twist. And actually, if I'm gonna be honest here, the only reason why I even reviewed this movie in the first place is because I wanted to reenact my reaction to seeing the Jurassic Park kid in this. Because basically, the way you saw me react in those reenactments, that is basically what it was like when I saw this movie for the first time. The very first scene, I didn't know it for a little bit, but then as that scene was ending, I started thinking he looks a little familiar. When he showed up the second time, pieces were starting to form together, but I just couldn't quite get it by the time the scene ended. And then in this last scene, that's when I hit the epiphany. I slammed my hand on the keyboard to pause the movie. I went on IMDb, and I discovered that the Jurassic Park kid was in this. Unfortunately, he doesn't save the movie, but I just thought that was really cool. Personal ratings of 4 out of 10. The few things I like in this are severely outweighed by the stuff that doesn't work. And as for the realistic rating, it gets a well-deserved migraine out of 10. Dream Child is a perfect example on how not to do a sequel. And while Wes Craven didn't direct it, he did write it. So I don't know what he was thinking when he made this. I just don't know. And when you get down to the fact that the next movie in the series, Freddy's Dead, dropped this whole storyline, but still somehow performed worse, you can see where that movie really failed, which is why I think Freddy's Dead is the worst in the series, while Dream Child is the second worst in the series. So you know what? To really soothe this headache, we're gonna break from all this action, death, and violence, and cover something calm, nostalgic, and timeless.
Bars!